All right, we have made it to the end of Mice and Men. Thank goodness. Let's talk about some key points from chapter 6 if you are reading this for class. First, there's these weird hallucinations that Lenny has when he is on the riverbank. One of them is his Aunt Clara who raised him, and one of them is a giant rabbit, and they both speak in Lenny's voice. Crooks has actually already talked about this back in part 4. He told Lenny, when you're alone, when you're distressed, you start to see things. You don't know if they're real because you don't have another person there to anchor you to reality. And that's what happens to Lenny. These things from his mind, the memory of this beloved aunt, this kind woman who raised him, the thought of having a pet rabbit, things that usually bring him comfort, things that bring him peace, get warped by his fear. And they turn into things that taunt him with his fear of being alone and his fear of abandonment. Another thing to notice is how this whole story has moved in a circle. We are back at the campsite on the river, same spot where the book began, same people, George and Lenny, and weirdly same circumstances. In chapter 1, they arrived at that campsite after this incident in Weed where Lenny touched a young woman's dress and couldn't let go of it. Now they are back after the incident with Curly's wife, so the entire story has moved in a circle. Part 1 and part 6 even kind of conclude the same way. In part 1, Lenny is upset and asks George to tell him the story about the land and the rabbits, and George does so. And that happens again in part 6. George tells the story to calm Lenny down, give him a moment of peace. So in this part, we see the dream, this vision of the farm where they're going to have a rabbit hutch. In part 1 and part 6, dreams symbolize the same thing. Dreams are a refuge. The whole book, they've been thinking that this farm where they're going to go, that's the safe spot, that's the goal. But in these two parts, we see that the real refuge, the real safe place is just the dream itself. That's what brings them comfort in the end. Also in this section, we have the conclusion of that domino effect of violence that we've seen in each section of the book. What started with some unintentional harm with Lenny touching this young woman's dress has ended in murder. Now, we as readers may not like classifying this as a murder because we know the backstory and we know who, Curly, and what else is coming for Lenny. However, this is the intentional, premeditated killing of another person, and it's the conclusion of that domino effect of violence that began in part 1. And we are done. That is about all I've got on Of Mice and Men. I will talk to you later. Bye.